On this episode of Hockey Inside Out, does Carey Price really have a minor injury? And what's with all the Pacioretty haters out there? We're back with another episode of Hockey Inside Out with Stu Cowan, CBC Daybreak's Jessica Rusnak, and Chris Nilan. Here's what we're going to be talking about on today's show. Number 1, do you believe Carey Price's lower body injury is a minor one? Number 2, how do you explain Max Pacioretty's lack of popularity with Habs fans? Number 3, why is the Canadiens' penalty kill unit so dismal this season? Number 4, did the Canadiens really need to sign Antti Niemi? And number 5, will Habs GM Marc Bartra regret signing defenseman Karl Alzner to an expensive 5-year deal? Let's start the show. After Carey Price suffered an apparent injury on November 2nd in the warm-up before a 6-3 loss to the Minnesota Wild, both Price and Marc Bartra assured the media that the injury was minor and he'd be out of the lineup for no longer than 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks has come and gone, and Price still stands by his story that it's just a minor lower body injury and everyone should stop worrying. And I guess while we're at it, we should also probably forget about that little stretch of 10 games right before his injury that just so happened to be the worst 10 games of his career, because I'm sure one has nothing to do with the other. Do you believe Carey Price has a minor lower body injury?
Who knows? Apparently there's an injury. Apparently he got hurt in the warm-up in Minnesota. My question is, what was wrong with him before the Minnesota game, before he got injured? And I know he said yesterday he's not using the injury as an excuse. I get it. But all those games before Minnesota, he did not play well. For me, the injury was between his ears. There was something going on with him that totally threw his game off. He could not focus. He could not be the Carey Price that we're used to seeing. So I don't know anything about the injury. They're so secretive. And I understand that about hockey teams. They want to protect the players. But, yeah, who knows what's going on. I just know one thing. That Carey Price, the best goalie in the world, does not drive off a cliff all of a sudden in his play, go down the tubes like his did. Without something going on mentally.
Well, Monday I showed up early in Brossard, and he was on the ice with the goalie coach Stefan Waite, and he took some shots from long distance, but he didn't do any side-to-side stuff, and then he did just firing the puck around the boards and stopping it behind the net. You could tell there's something wrong. I mean, I believe there is something probably between the ears wrong too, but physically there's something wrong with him. Minor injury, there's a lot of lower body injuries now on this guy's body for a 30-year-old goalie going into a 8-year, $84 million contract next season. There's a lot of reason for concern. Minor injury, yeah, but minor injury turns into a major injury at some point, and I think that's the fear going forward.
I think you have to remove the minor part and just say it's an injury. He's probably going to be out for at least a month. If he stops skating and he's going to wait and see how his body reacts to that, that's not a good sign. So I think right now people just have to come to terms that Carey Price has this injury that's going to put him out. But the good news is that Charlie Lindgren is playing so well, so he's been able to fill that void and sort of calm everyone down in the city of Montreal and Habs fans around, that they don't have to freak out too much about it. And I think just give Carey Price the time to come back and be 100% healthy, because as Stu said, he's got an 8-year contract coming up, and you don't want him to constantly have a lingering injury that's going to affect him going down.
Well,
a lingering injury?
Lingering injury.
Well, on Tuesday, I asked Price if it was a playoff game against Columbus, could you play? And he said, absolutely. I don't really believe him. I don't think he could.
Well, that's such an easy answer to say, because it's not the playoffs. It's like saying, hey, if, I don't know, Milo Ventimiglia was here from This Is Us, and he asked you on a date, would you say yes, of course?
Stu, you mentioned his minor injuries piling up. Do you think that could turn into, his contract could turn into like a source of huge regret for the Habs because of that?
I think it could. He's going to be 31 before the new contract kicks in, and he's a big guy. Carey Price is a big man. I mean, he's built like a linebacker for football. You know, most of these goalies are built more like gymnasts. But Carey, it's a lot of weight going down when he hits his knees. It's a lot of weight pushing side to side. It takes a toll on his body, and he's played a lot of hockey, Olympics and World Cups and everything else. So it's I think there's a concern there.
Okay. Despite the fact that Max Pacioretty is on pace for another 30-goal season for the 5th time in a row, he still gets a lot of flack from Habs fans. Why do you think he's not so popular among Montreal Canadiens fans?
I think it has to do with the fact that Max is a big man and he doesn't play a physical hockey game. People see that, and they want him to battle in the corners. They want him to play like Gallagher and score goals. They don't want to see him go up and down the ice like a goal scorer who, quite frankly, is a streaky scorer. And when he has his little funks there, it's not a whole lot of fun. And I just think people, they're like, you know, he's not flamboyant, Max.
Well, that's what I was going to say. People don't know who Max Pacioretty is. That he doesn't show any personality. Now, Carey Price doesn't show too much personality either when speaking to him. But you see him, he went to the blood drive. He's got his cowboy hat on. He's very much a Western guy, and you get to see that from Carey Price. And he's a pretty funny guy, too, that he makes these subtle jokes from time to time. But from Max Pacioretty, you know, there's nothing. You just kind of see blah when it comes to him.
If he played like Brendan Gallagher, he'd be the best power forward in the NHL. He'd be making a lot more money than he's making right now. But you're right, he's not a physical guy. You know, I joke, I said he'd be good at a campfire because he does this all the time, you know, poking into the thing rather than driving through a guy and taking the puck off him. But Max Pacioretty is what Max Pacioretty is, and there's not a lot of guys in the NHL who do. You know, before the season, he's going to score 30 goals. Marketing, it's going to happen. I think. I still think the captaincy and the leadership thing here weighs on him heavily. He's so hard on himself. I think
he is.
I think life would be easier for him, and he'd be a better player if he didn't have it. I know he really wants it. He won't give it up. He loves being, and that's admirable that he wants to be captain. But I think it just weighs heavily on him. He's so hard on himself, and I think the C weighs heavy on him.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And again, the fans with Max, you know, I think what they should appreciate about him is the fact that he has scored all them goals over the last 5-6 years, and he hasn't really had a number one centerman. Like, come on, David Deharnay, and Noah, he's a great kid and pretty good player, worked his way to the NHL, but without a number one center, Max has always scored the goals. And you can say, well, they're not big ones, he didn't do it in the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. He still put the numbers up.
But I think fans don't forget, too, that Max Pacioretty is someone who can't lie. So when he's unhappy with something, he's very honest about it. I always remember when Scott Gomez was
Can you lie good?
I'm a very good liar. That he's basically blamed the city of Montreal, the fans, the media. If Scott Gomez played somewhere else and didn't have this kind of pressure, he probably would be successful. And that's what he said. And I think that rubs fans the wrong way when sometimes he says how he truly feels.
Well, on the California road trip, I actually almost felt bad for Max. He was in the scrum and he was saying, I'm the worst player on the ice, and it's hard to be a leader when you're not playing well yourself. But that's who Max Pacioretty is. That's honest. And, you know, one thing with a leader, you can't be phony. And I don't think Max Pacioretty's phony. He is who he is. And as I said, he is who he is, and he scores 30 goals every year.
Yeah, well, if you're watching Max, I think you're doing a pretty good job. The Canadiens' penalty kill unit ranks 28th in the NHL. Why are they so dismal this season?
Goaltender's your best penalty killer, bottom line. That's one of them.
Yeah, Carey
Two,
Price,
they're not aggressive at all. They seem to just set up in that box and never try and get the rotation going where they can jump a guy, start the force, and end up breaking guys up in their own zone. They're a little too passive. And, you know, it's surprising Claude Julien team not being good at penalty killing. And Boston was really good when he was down there, but we forget Doug Jarvis was the assistant coach there. And Doug Jarvis, wherever he's gone, the penalty killing's been unbelievable. So, goaltending, and they're too passive.
Plus, they can't keep Paul Byron on the ice for 2 minutes on the penalty kill. I think Byron, with that speed, I mean, he had a breakaway, he didn't score against Columbus shorthanded. I think he keeps the other team's power play on their toes a bit defensively because, you know, he's trying to get the puck at the blue line. If he does, he's gone. But you're right, they're not very aggressive on it, and a lot of it has to do with Carey Price's struggles early in the season. I mean, the Canadiens kept saying, you make one mistake, the puck's in the back of the net, and there was a period there where it was. Charlie Lindgren now is, you know, solidified the goalie position, and that'll help the penalty kill.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know what more I could add, just the fact that they're not aggressive enough, they're too passive, and that's sort of been their fault right now.
Okay. The Habs just claimed Antti Niemi off waivers from Florida. Do you think that was really necessary?
I think so, because you don't want Zach Fucale sitting on the bench as a backup, a guy who's never played a game in the NHL. Charlie Lindgren, you know, for now is a #1 job nailed down, pretty solid. But they don't want Zach Fucale sitting on the bench. I don't think they trust Zach Fucale to come in. And it's a veteran player. And again, it goes back to Marc Bergevin's connections to the Chicago Blackhawks. Niemi was the goalie in Chicago when they won the Stanley Cup. Stefan Waite was his goalie coach there. So Marc Bergevin, when trouble starts, he always goes back to his Chicago roots and tries to find somebody there, and a player he knows, I guess. So.
It was almost like he had a crystal ball, Marc Bergevin, earlier this week. He said, we don't want to be the Vegas Golden Knights right now. And then the other night, they're on to their 5th goaltender. He was playing in the WHL, and there he is coming into his first NHL game. You don't want that kind of situation. And even though Zach Fucale is older than this junior player from Vegas, he basically has played his entire professional career in the East Coast. He has very limited experience in the AHL, so he's not the guy you want to be a backup. And in the next 2 weeks, they've got 2 back-to-back games, and Charlie Lindgren can't be playing all that. You need someone who's able to be a veteran and can get the job done.
Well, I think, again, I think it's a good move depth-wise, obviously. And when Price comes back, you don't want Lindgren backing up Price. He's got to go to Laval and be a starting goalie that he is. So you have Niemi there, the backup, which is good. And then if you have those back-to-back games and it's Price, you can always call Charlie Lindgren from Laval to play it. And if you really don't want to go with Niemi, but in a pinch, I think it's a good move to have him on the bench as a backup. And obviously his relationship with Stefan Waite, when he won the Stanley Cup with Chicago, Niemi, that was his goaltending coach. So he knows him well. And, I think it's a good move.
As Bergevin said Tuesday, Al Montoya with his concussion, he could be out 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months. Concussion, you have no idea. He might not be back again this season. So they need to get – but I think they might be watching Niemi with one eye covered because he's really struggled this season in Pittsburgh.
Why did they tell us the one injury they tell us is concussion? They won't tell you anything else, right?
It's true. The thing with Carey Price, I don't understand. If it's a groin, say he has a groin pull. I mean, I can see when Jonathan Drouin hurt his hand. And
you're not going to slash the guy's groin.
And he said, no, it's not my hand. And I can understand that because they're going to target his hand. But if a goalie has a groin, what are you going to spear him in the groin? They should just come out and say he tweaked his left knee, he tweaked his groin, he did whatever. Then all the other stuff around. I think a lot of times when the Canadiens go into damage control, they do more damage than they prevent. But they keep doing it repeatedly.
They don't care.
Well,
I don't know. It's a hard fan base to please here in Montreal. They're tough. Everyone's tough. The season is just under a quarter of the way done. Karl Alzner has still not been delivering what he's been expected of. Do you think Marc Bartra will live to regret the 5-year, $23.125 million contract he signed him to?
Listen, Eddie Asner might have his best days behind him.
Inside joke.
But he certainly, he's struggling. I think. Would this guy look better with a different defensive core in a different situation? Maybe. He's certainly made some mistakes. He looks a little slow out there at times. And I've heard the fact that him learning a new system, the zone defense, has been troubling him. But you're not playing zone defense when you're moving the puck. You're moving the puck, those things. He's really got to kind of get his game going, and I haven't seen the Karl Alzner that I think we thought we were getting.
The fact Jeff Petrie hasn't played well doesn't help either. But Alzner he looks slow, and the game keeps getting faster and faster. And he's sort of the throwback defenseman, right, Chris? Strong in front of the net, strong on the boards, big, strong guy. Doesn't move that quick, and the game today is if you can't move quick, it's really tough. I mean, that's why Victor Mete's been able to step in and play in the NHL because he can skate, he's quick. But 5 years, I think, is going to be a long time. But in Bergevin's defense, there's a lot of free agents who don't want to come to Montreal. And so you're limited. And he wanted to come. He came. He came with his wife one day. They fell in love with the city. They loved it. They wanted to play here, and he signed them long term.
Well, that's it. That there wasn't kind of this other option for Marc Bergevin. They were already low on defensemen. Karl Alzner was a guy that had many other options. He decided to come here, and you have to give him that 5 years. Karl, he's about 30 years old, I believe, so he's not going to be signing a 2-year deal, moving his young family here and maybe be gone, that he wants something that gives him a little bit more stability.
And he might remind Bergevin a bit of himself, because Bergevin was a Karl Alzner type of defense. You played against Bergie, right? Did you?
Yeah.
You fought him once,
I fought him in New York, Slapped him around. I'm dying to see who David Schlemko is. Schlemdog millionaire. Who is this guy? He's mysterious.
He's Bobby Orr, apparently. He's going to come in here and save everything.
Wow.
You forget, even when David Schlemko does come back, you're going to have a guy who hasn't played.
Oh, he's going to have a whole lot of pressure on him. He's the savior. He's
the most famous 5th or 6th defenseman in the NHL who hasn't played a game yet.
Okay, so just for the record, you kicked Bergevin's ass? Is that what?
Yeah, I kicked his ass. And I'll do it again if I have to.
Okay, good. So, Bergevin haters, just know that Chris is down for you.
You can find it on YouTube. It's out there.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. That's our show for today. We want to thank you all for tuning in. Share, like, subscribe. You know the drill. We'll be back next Thursday. I'm Adam Susser.